Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile, and this is the Sparkos Labs Gemini, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Sparkos Labs for sending over the Gemini for a review. To greatly appreciate it. Sparkos Labs, you rock. Alright, so the Sparkos Labs Gemini, this will set you back $1,000 from your bank account. It is a tube hybrid headphone, amplifier, and preamp. So I was introduced to the Sparkos Labs Gemini back at Oxpona in 2024, earlier this year. And the Gemini impressed me while I was sitting there at the table listening on various headphones, and the way that it was able to change tube sounds and have different gains and things like that. I was rather impressed. And then I got to know Andrew from Sparkos Labs a little bit more, and Andrew explained the inner workings of the Gemini and how it functions and how you can change things and do this and that with it. And even though I'm not the most knowledgeable and really understanding of how amplifiers work and how op amps and tubes can alter things and do all this other thing, I'm not really into the scientific side of things and the specky stuff, but Andrew made it very easy to understand, and he also at the same time was very friendly and very nice, and we got to know each other and spend some time together over the next 3 days, and I got more listening time with the Gemini. And so Andrew was like, you want one to review? And so we discussed a review, and he sent one on over, and I've had it here on my desk for about 6 to 8 weeks, and I've been truly enjoying the Gemini. So the Sparkos Labs Gemini, it has a lot of technology inside it, and thankfully Sparkos Labs included this little cheat sheet for me. Got some pictures, some information about the product itself, and then a bunch of specs here. If you want to pause the video and read them all, you can. But I'll read them off here. So you have an Alps Blue Velvet volume control, Sparkos SS2590 discrete op amp output stage, Sparkos discrete voltage regulators. There's 0 global feedback, no capacitors in the signal path. It uses 6922 vacuum tubes. You can also use some others. There's like 10 different compatible tubes that go with it. It has adjustable tube bias. You can control the tube-iness of the tubes. It has a tube heater soft start. There's a 40-second tube warm-up delay. It has gain control. It has a selectable negative 15 dB input attenuator. It has fully DC protected. It has a low output impedance of 0.25 ohms. It's a high dampening factor. Also, frequency response range 10 hertz to 100 kilohertz. 12 dB low gain, 21.5 dB high gain. Unloaded crosstalk of 100 dB. There's power output of maximum of 2 watts at 32 ohms. Maximum of 750 milliwatts at 300 ohm. 15 volts of peak output voltage. 250 milliamps of peak output current. THD is 0.1%. That's about it. There's a bunch of other things on here, but it was nice of them to give me that little cheat sheet because I'm not a very specky, techie type of person. Now the Gemini. Very nice looking little device, kind of a, nothing super special about flashy colors and all that kind of stuff, but it's nice and black and has a very nice layout on the front. So you have this big volume knob, and then you have your gain switch, your 1/4 inch out, your XLR out, some branding, and then your power switch, and there's a little LED light right here that's blue. On the back side, you have your RCA input and output and your cable input. Whoops. I do not have it screwed in because in order to change the settings, you do have to take the lid off, and it makes it easier to change the tube as well. So let's see what it looks like without the case. Voila, there you are. That's what the internals look like. Now real quick, this nice metal case does have some venting on the sides and feels very sturdy. I did notice that the venting does a very good job. The Gemini does not get very warm at all. Here's a closer look of the front. You have your volume knob here, your 1/4 inch out, your XLR, and then your power, and then there's that little blue LED. Closer look to the back side. So you can see here that you have these little cap covers. There's some right here also, and there's one on the other side of your tube. And those will alter things depending on the setting that you want. Now the ones up top here, those are your dB attenuation. So when they're fully covered, you're getting maximum output. If you take those off, you're going to get the negative dB. And then you have right here next to the tube, you have a bias for how much tube that you want. If you take the cap off, you're going to have more tube. Putting the cap fully on, and you're going to have a little bit less of the tube. And then over here, this little cap is going, you can change it. There's 2 settings, type 1 or type 2, and that's for what type of tube you are using. And then you have your gain switch, and the gain switch is unique in that it definitely makes it louder or quieter or less power, but also it's going to kind of control how much of the tube you actually hear. And I know that sounds really strange, but it's kind of a unique amplifier, and how everything all works together. And I'm going to let the paperwork explain how all that works. Be right back. Okay, I'm going to do a Carnal Sin. I'm going to read some of the description. So the first level of customization is going to be your tube rolling, as mentioned. You can change all the different tubes. There's 10 different tubes that you can roll with it. And of course, that'll factor into the changes of warmth, clarity, imaging, your richness, fullness, soundstage, dynamics, all that sort of stuff. Just like tubes will affect other tube amps. Next one is through the gain button. Each tube has its own uniqueness as to how much sonically it will change with gain, and this definitely shows that difference, and you will hear a little bit different sonic signature based on how much of the gain is being used. And then the other one is the tube bias, and that's the one that has some similarity to the gain, but it actually doesn't change the gain at all. It just changes the overall perceived differences of the tube. So it's a very unique amplifier that I truly did enjoy, but it's really heavy. And so I'm going to set it to the side and talk about what headphones and speakers that I enjoyed with it. So the Gemini was a unique amplifier in that it pretty much could power anything that I had in the office, planars and dynamics, and it really worked well even with IEMs, because you could change the attenuation if you needed to, but really most IEMs did not hiss off of the Gemini. I was rather surprised at that. You know, if you went into high gain, have some issues, but even IEMs worked very well with the Gemini. The planars that I tried, you know, everything from an Odyssey LCD5 to a Hi-Fi-Man Sundara and everything in between, were kind of hit or miss as to whether or not they were being, you know, fully powered and brought to their full potential. Most of them were listenable and would get loud, but I could definitely tell that some of them just weren't being driven properly. And, you know, every now and then the treble would be a little bit too much intensity, bass was a little bit sloppy, and it just didn't feel like it was really driving home the planars as well as some of the other solid states that I have behind me. But for the most part, everything got loud. Where I found that the Gemini really shined was with dynamics. And I found that it really shined with the Sennheiser HD8XX that's behind me and the Audio-Technica R70Xs, which are over there. Get my finger pointed in the right direction. And also Sennheiser HD660 S2s and HD600s and 580s. I found that all of those really sounded fantastic with the Gemini. And I also found that some of the closebacks that I have, like the Rode NTH 100 and Austrian Hi-X 60s, sounded very good with it too. So dynamics is where the most listening happened for me. And I found that I could hear the differences in various tubes, whether or not it was a Telefunken that Andrew sent over, or if it was one of these 88s that he sent over. Also, this is Electro Harmonics, and then the stock Electro Harmonics that's in. I found that the tubes sounded slightly different. Changing the biases also brought out a little bit more richness, or made it sound a little bit more lean and a little closer to something more solid state. And so it was an interesting experience. And I found that the Gemini does a good job of giving you whatever you're seeking, and that you were just enjoying, you know, whatever mood you're in. If you wanted more tube, you can get more tube. If you wanted it to be a little bit less tubey and a little bit more leaning towards a solid state type of listen, you could do that as well. You could never really officially get completely away from the tubes, but you definitely could lean out the tube presentation. And I just found it to be very enjoyable to use. I found that with the 8XX and the R70X, both of those got this little extra euphoric type of presentation. There was a little bit extra body and this little nice lushness to it, and just this kind of harmonious warmth, and it just felt a little bit more personable. And the 8XX wasn't quite as more analytical, cold leaning like it can be, especially on some solid states. And the R70X wasn't quite as stretched out and as far as big and massive. It was a little bit smaller and just felt a little bit more natural. And I was really impressed by the way that the Gemini helped both of those focus a little bit more on the soundstage, while also adding in a little bit more body, adding in a little bit more depth and layering to both, and maintaining the technical abilities of both headphones while also giving it that same natural tone and timbre with just a little bit extra. And so it just brought this little extra sauce to the whole presentation of those two headphones. And those were my favorites with the Gemini, but I did enjoy pretty much everything else. And I found, as mentioned earlier, planars struggled just a little bit. Didn't feel like they were being quite driven as well, but not all planars were affected that way, just a few. Mostly the Sundara, the Moondrop Para, the Aria Stealth, and the Ananda kind of felt that way. But then there were other planars that sounded pretty decent. So just kind of was hit or miss with the planars, and dynamics really didn't have that. Everything sounded fantastic with it. So the Gemini. Yeah, I like this amplifier and I find it to be very enjoyable. One thing that I did find interesting, and that is I actually listen to it mostly open. I went without the lid most of the time, and I don't normally do that. The only time I would put the lid on was when I was not using it and I wanted to keep it kind of away from dust. But the majority of the time, I was sitting here looking at it and just enjoying it open-faced. It would be really cool if there was this clear acrylic case on top with some sort of access so you could reach those. That way you didn't have to take the case off, but you could just see all the internal workings. Just a pipe dream. But anyways, so the Gemini. Yeah, I like this amp a lot, and it is my favorite tube hybrid, but it's not really fair because I don't have anything else to compare it to when it comes to tube hybrids. Power-wise, it does very well and had no issues other than with planars. And how does it compare to a couple of the other amplifiers that I have around on my desk? It's very, very similar as far as power goes and extremely clean, but none of them can change and match whatever mood I'm in. So this one's special, and I truly enjoy it. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. Check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support channel. Speaking of supporting channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide. Also, thank you very much to all who give one-time gifts. That also is much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, various ways that you can do it: one-time gifts, PayPal, Venmo, and also YouTube, or monthly subscriptions with YouTube memberships and Patreon. With monthly subscriptions, you can get early access to videos and also some private lounges on my Discord server. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. Speaking of my Discord server, there's a link down below. It's open to the public if you're interested in joining that. Be fun to have you. There's all kinds of other links also regarding music recommendations, gear rankings, all kinds of things are listed down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy your music, and that honesty is the best policy.